At 24, Mara is sitting outside a mechanic's shop with a $1,180 repair estimate, $430 in her checking account, and her mother's contact already open on the screen. The warning light had been glowing for 3 weeks, quietly building the confidence of a bill that knew it would eventually win. Rent has cleared, payday is 9 days away, and a credit card could make the problem disappear for a while. Before deciding what to cut, delay, or charge, Mara is already preparing to call home. So how does a person become 24 years old and still not know how to absorb an ordinary financial hit? Not a crisis, not a catastrophe, just an inconvenient Tuesday with a bill attached. The answer may have started years earlier. An impulsive purchase at 8, money spent too early at 10, lost headphones at 12, money lent to the wrong friend at 14, and a stereo bought too soon at 16. In most of those moments, a parent stepped in before the consequence could fully land. Every rescue came from love. Each one also removed a rehearsal. Some money mistakes need to happen before adulthood, because childhood offers the last version of failure, with tiny numbers attached. The most dangerous may be the one a child is never allowed to practice. Those mistakes are usually small and ordinary. Spending too quickly, running out too early, losing something valuable, trusting badly, and refusing to wait. For Mara, the first was impulse spending, disguised as a stuffed animal. At 8, she stood in a Target checkout aisle, clutching one she had wanted for exactly 4 minutes. She had $11 from her birthday, burning a hole through the front pocket of her backpack, and she spent every cent of it before they reached the car. By the time they got home, she didn't want it anymore. It sat on the passenger seat like something already regretted, still warm from her hands. Her mother watched her stare out the window and felt the familiar tug, the urge to fix it. So she returned the stuffed animal, let Mara choose something else, and quietly filed the $11 under things that don't really matter. This was one mistake Mara needed to make, while the price was still $11, buying something impulsively, and having to live with the regret. Instead, the regret disappeared before the money lesson had time to land. It is a cheap lesson, which is exactly why parents are tempted to erase it. Once the amount feels small, the purchase gets dismissed as harmless. But the real lesson is the gap between wanting something and still wanting it 10 minutes later. A gap plenty of adults are still discovering in car dealerships decades later. Buyer's remorse is one of the cheapest financial teachers a child will ever meet. Most people don't get reintroduced to it until the stakes are a financed sofa or a lease signed, because the salesperson smiled at exactly the right moment. Somewhere in this story, the most expensive mistake won't even belong to Mara. It'll belong to the person standing next to her, trying to decide whether to step in. We'll get there. That choice, whether to step in or let the lesson remain, is exactly what Raised to Spend is here to unpack. Subscribe to the channel and stay with Mara as she gets older, and the rescues get more expensive. At 10 came the planning mistake kids need to make early. Spending allowance too soon and running out before something important arrives. Mara used hers on Monday, then remembered on Thursday that a field trip needed $9 by Friday. Her mother had the money, of course. Parents somehow become emergency lenders the moment a child's budget collapses, with no application and extremely generous underwriting. Instead of paying immediately, she asked Mara what she planned to do. Mara completed 3 small chores and reached Friday $1 short. Her mother covered the rest, and the field trip went ahead. Mara had made the planning mistake, but she never fully experienced what running out meant. The missing dollar still appeared, and Friday still worked out. That is how poor planning can become somebody else's inconvenience instead of the child's constraint. In adulthood, the missing dollar becomes an overdraft, a credit card balance, or next month's paycheck pulled into this one. At 12 came carelessness, one of the first money mistakes that can teach financial responsibility. Mara left her headphones on a bus, most likely. Children can remember a Wi-Fi password from 3 years ago and still lose the thing they wore all morning. Her father's first move was reflexive, order another pair before she finished feeling bad. By Thursday, the new headphones had arrived, and the consequence had disappeared with them. Losing something valuable should teach a child that carelessness creates cost and inconvenience for whoever is standing closest. Mara learned something easier instead. Lost things get replaced. When that lesson follows a child into adulthood, the replacements become more expensive. a car damaged by missed maintenance, a late fee because nobody opened the mail, or a security deposit lost through avoidable damage. At 14 came the mistake of bad financial judgment, trusting someone who had not earned it. Mara lent $20 to a friend who swore, with total sincerity, she'd have it back by Monday. That Monday came and went. So did several more Mondays. Her mother hated watching Mara feel embarrassed and taken advantage of, so she replaced the $20 and called the other girl's parents. The money came back. The discomfort disappeared. Mara had made the mistake, but someone else handled the recovery. Parents hate allowing this mistake because it reaches beyond money and into trust. But $20 could have been cheap tuition in checking promises, setting boundaries, and deciding what to do when someone does not repay you. Mara got the money back without having to work through any of that herself. Later, the same gap can show up in a business partner who does not pay, a bad investment, or a deal built on confidence and urgency instead of evidence. Judgment improves after it is tested. When the loss is erased immediately, the child may remember that someone treated them badly without learning how to respond when nobody can restore the money. At 16 came impatience, the mistake that makes delayed gratification feel unreasonable. Mara wanted a car stereo before she had a job to pay for it, so she bought a cheaper one too soon. Within weeks, she regretted it. Her father had preached patience for years. Watching a teenager practice it in real time was apparently less appealing, so he covered the difference for the better system and told her she could repay him later. The disappointing stereo disappeared, along with the need to save, wait, or decide whether the upgrade still mattered after a few months. A child who never practices waiting may grow into an adult who pays interest to avoid it. That is more or less the entire business model behind buy now, pay later. Mara had made the mistakes children need to make. Too often, her parents removed the part that made them useful, the recovery. They covered missed permission slips, replaced lost items, restored money, and paid the difference when patience ran out. Each rescue solved the immediate problem while teaching Mara that someone else would absorb the cost when her decisions became uncomfortable. Once rescue becomes predictable, parents quietly become part of the child's budget, an emergency fund that never appears on paper. That is how financial dependence can begin without anyone deciding to create it. None of this came from doubt or a need to control her. Watching a child sit in discomfort simply does not feel like patience while it is happening. It can feel closer to cruelty, even when it is not. Parents can help a child recover without making the consequence disappear. The real question is whether protection keeps the money mistake small or prevents the child from learning how recovery works. The kid forgets the regret by dinner. The expectation that someone else will fix it lasts much longer. Which brings us back to the parking lot outside the mechanic's shop. By 24, the same money mistakes have changed currency. The impulse purchase that used to be a stuffed animal is now furniture financed at 20-something% interest. The planning failure that left her $1 short of missing a field trip now shows up as rent, due 4 days before payday. The lost headphones have become a neglected car repair. Bad judgment is now a scam, a bad investment, or a deal with the wrong person. The refusal to wait has an interest rate attached. $11 doesn't compound. $1,180 on a credit card does. And the rescue, the one that used to arrive as a covered permission slip or quietly replaced headphones, is still available too. She could call her mother. Her mother would probably say yes. It's an oddly common arrangement. Plenty of parents are still quietly covering rent, phone bills, or car repairs for kids well into their 20s without ever quite deciding to. This isn't a prediction that every rescued kid grows into an adult who can't cope. Most people carry some of both. Failures they were allowed to feel and ones that got smoothed over before they noticed. What actually changes is the price tag. $11 at 8 becomes $1,180 at 24. The lesson didn't disappear. It just got more expensive to learn. For parents teaching kids money management, there is a simpler test than guilt. These are the money mistakes children need to make before 18. Impulse spending, poor planning, carelessness, bad judgment, and impatience, all kept small enough that recovery is still possible. What makes each mistake useful is the recovery that follows. Before stepping in, ask 3 questions. Is this dangerous? real safety, real exploitation, real risk. Step in immediately, no hesitation. Is this permanent? A contract? A decision that can't be walked back once it's signed? Guide closely, because a 14-year-old shouldn't navigate that alone. But if it's simply uncomfortable, an empty allowance, a missed optional activity, a small item that needs replacing next week instead of tonight, that's usually the moment worth sitting with instead of solving. Even then, parents can help without erasing the consequence. Help the child think it through, earn the difference, or build a repayment plan. The useful question is what part of recovery the child can own: waiting, saving, earning, or accepting that the decision still counts. The child does not need to carry the whole burden. They need enough of it to discover that recovery has steps. The parent stays present. The lesson stays too. Kids don't grow into financially steady adults because nothing ever goes wrong for them. They get there because something small goes wrong, and they find out firsthand that regret passes, that money can be rebuilt, that one bad decision doesn't have to become a permanent character trait. Some of the strongest financial education begins after a small mistake. Parents can control the stakes without erasing the experience, keeping it safe enough to survive and real enough to learn from. Mara is still sitting in that parked car. She is looking at the $1,180 estimate, then at her mother's name on the screen. The smaller versions of this moment had usually ended with someone else returning the toy, replacing the money, or covering the difference. She taps her mother's name. The repair is ordinary. The problem is solvable, but solving it without someone else absorbing the cost feels unfamiliar because it is the part she rarely had to practice while the numbers were small. Somewhere behind her, in the house she no longer lives in, there may still be the toy her mother let her choose instead, sitting in a drawer, or wherever $11 rescues go to be forgotten. Nobody in that house would ever have called it a rescue. It just looked like a small kindness. It just looked like a Tuesday. If this made one ordinary money moment feel less ordinary, subscribe to Raised to Spend. We talk about teaching kids about money, family finance, and raising children who can handle financial consequences before adulthood raises the price.